So in a lawn, it's really important that you have a good pH balance. You don't want it to be too high, you don't want it to be too low. So in this video, we're going to talk about what to do if your soil pH is too high, how to even identify that it might be too high, and what can you do to address it. Hey everyone, my name is Sam and I'm an average Joe lawn nut. So a while back I did a soil test on my own lawn and my project lawn, which is my in-laws lawn. In-laws lawn. Stuff makes me laugh, I don't know why. In-laws lawn. Anyways, when looking at the results, I found out that my soil pH is slightly a bit too high. I mean, not by a lot, but their pH was way too high. For me, a normal soil pH should be anywhere around 6 and 6.5. That's the optimal range for me. Now, I know a lot of you might think that a neutral soil pH 7 should be the optimal, but for me, slightly acidic is the way to go, because then you have the most uptake of nutrients. So I always aim to be somewhere around 6 and 6.5. So 6.8 isn't a disaster, but compared to other soil tests I've done, I can see that it's going up. I mean, I had a feeling when looking at their lawn that there's something wrong with their soil pH, because they do keep up with their fertilizing and they do have a robo mower, so it goes out and mows every day. So I was kind of wondering, how do you have so much weeds and so compacted soil even though you do everything pretty much what you're supposed to do? So I bet you're wondering right now if you might have a high pH as well. Well, then just keep watching and let's find out if you might have and what you do to address it. So one of the ways you can suspect that you might have a high soil pH is just what I mentioned. You fertilize regularly, but you can't see the effect of it. You don't get that growth spur and you still get a lot of weeds like clover. If you do keep up with your nitrogen fertilizers, you shouldn't have that much clover, since clover is one of the few plants that actually takes nitrogen from the air and kind of makes it available for the soil. So if you have a nitrogen deficiency, you will see an increase in clover. I mean, you might still get some natural clover here and there anyways, but normally that's an indicator that something is wrong. The plants cannot take up all the nitrogen you're giving it. And I mean, that's the case with my in-laws lawn. If you look at the soil test, you can see that they have plenty of nitrogen in the soil. It's just that the plants can't take it up. If you have a high pH, the plants will have a hard time taking up all the nutrients. So another indicator that you might have a high pH is if you have some bare spots here and there that kind of mysteriously appear. I mean, you have some bare spots in your lawn which you can explain if you have pest issues or grubs or something like that. Or if you have pets that do their business on the lawn, then you would get a bare spot where they did it. But if you don't have any of those issues and you still get mysterious bare spots here and there, then that's also a sign of high pH. And a compacted soil is another sign that you might have a high pH. Now, these are just indications. Let me be perfectly clear. You cannot know just by these signs that you do have a high pH. You would need to do a soil test. But if I had any of these signs, I would definitely do a soil test, because I would kind of suspect that there's something wrong with the pH levels in the soil. So just to be perfectly clear, signs, not facts. So what might cause the pH to go up like this? So in our case, both my case and my in-laws, I think it's the fertilizer. So in Sweden we have a fertilizer, a very popular fertilizer called Algomin. It's a natural product, it's a great product, but it contains 33% sea lime, and lime, as you know, can cause pH to go up. And it's a really good fertilizer, don't get me wrong. I am not saying that Algomin is bad and you shouldn't be using it, but since it does contain a lot of lime, you do need to keep track of your pH levels and maybe do what I do and kind of mix it with other fertilizers. So if you have a lawn like them and you've used a fertilizer that contains a lot of lime over the years, and I'm talking over a lot of years, it won't raise the pH if you use it a year or two or something like that. So if you know you've done that as well, I would definitely do a soil test and check the pH. And just before we get into how we address this issue, I just need to clarify that solving these kinds of issues with getting pH up or down, it's not an overnight thing. You cannot just put one simple product on it and 1 week later it's all fixed. It's just not happening like that. It's a long-term fix. So this is probably something you need to work on for a season or 2 or even 3, depending on where you start with the pH level. All right, so how am I gonna address this issue and getting the pH to go downward? So what I'll do is start using more sulfur in my fertilizer. So sulfur is one way of getting your soil pH down. It will make the soil more acidic. So I will be using more of this fertilizer, which is called Fluorobate Masterlawn. So this fertilizer contains 26% sulfur trioxide. I normally use this fertilizer, but I normally mix it together with algumine. So every other time I will use this or the other one. So because my pH is trending upwards, I will be using more of this and less of the algumine for a while. I will still be using the algumine, just less of it. And it also contains 4% iron, which also helps make the soil more acidic. Now, you could use elemental sulfur as well. So elemental sulfur usually comes in a powder form. And the difference between elemental sulfur and sulfur you normally find in fertilizers is that elemental sulfur is not broken down in any way. So for the plants to be able to use it, you need the microbes in your lawn to kind of break it down first. And that's normally a process that takes anywhere between 3 to 6 months or even a year. So you would need the microbes in your lawn to be active while using it, which is kind of hard in Sweden since it takes so long and our window of kind of lawn season is pretty short. We have a long winter, as we did this year. We had winter pretty much up until summer began. So that's why I don't want to use elemental sulfur, and I feel that it's just too much powder of chemicals to put on the lawn. I don't want to really do that. And the same thing for my in-laws. I bought another bag for my in-laws, so I've given it to them. And I told them to use half the amount they normally would, but twice as often. So I kind of want them to fertilize at least once every 3 weeks to keep the soil acidic and get the pH down. Because they do have a lot of nutrients available in the soil. It's just that the plants can't utilize it. So we need to press the soil pH downwards. So let's get this stuff on the lawn. For future reference, don't use white socks when using a fertilizer with iron. Stupid. All right, so the fertilizer is down, and now it's important to remember to water this in. Algumine is a natural fertilizer, so you don't need to water it in. It won't burn anything, but this will. And remember to wash it off as soon as you have iron in it. You need to wash it off immediately, otherwise it will stain. So now I just need to water this in for a while, and then I will continue to use the Fluorobate for a while. I'll just follow the same instructions I gave to my in-laws. I'll use half the amount, but twice as often. So every 3 weeks I will use Fluorobate to kind of get the lawn's pH a bit down, but I will still mix in some algumine because it just has some great stuff in it I want the lawn to have. It has a lot of minerals and natural stuff, so I will still continue to use algumine. I'll just use this a bit more, but I need to stress this just one more time. For the love of everything that is holy, do a soil test. Don't go just by these assumptions. I just gave you some indication for you to kind of notice, well, I might have some high pH here because I have compacted soil, I have bare spots, I do fertilize, but nothing happens. But as I said, do a soil test. Don't just go by these assumptions. It just takes like 10 minutes to do one, so why would you skip it? And there are some cheap soil tests out there. I mean, as long as you get the soil pH, you're good to go. And I did a video where I just show you how you do a soil test very easily. Just watch that and do a soil test, and it will give you a straight answer. All right, so do a soil test, and I'll see you in the next one.